Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to the Mortgage Loan Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Garay, and we are brought to you by the Mortgage Marketing Animals. And today, a little bit different. I wanted to start a new series, and I'm starting it with one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Ginger Bell. And the name of this series is going to be The Journey to Success.
I
just
love
made
it.
that up on the spot, Ginger. The
That is the
Journey to
journey.
Success. That's right. And yeah, I've wanted to do this with several people, and I thought, well, I want to do a podcast with you today, and I thought, well, let's just start with you, Ginger.
Yeah,
And
I
what
love
I'm
it.
interested in is your journey to success. You're a successful person. A lot of people in the mortgage space know you. You work with a lot of big companies. I mean, you don't just wake up one morning and nail a contract with some big mortgage company on training them or you know what I mean? You don't. There's a process here to getting to where you are. And I would just love to know what that process was in 20 minutes. But and I'm not kidding, right?
20 years in 20 minutes.
20 years in 20 minutes is exactly what I'm after. Because I want to know, how did you wind up here? You're wildly successful. So many originators know you. So many people in the mortgage space know you. You've helped companies, you've helped individuals, you've helped teams. How did this happen? Because I think that we can learn from your journey, right? Whether it be a originator or someone on a loan officer's team or a real estate agent or whatever, if we're in business as self-employed people, entrepreneurs, which is what we are in the mortgage and real estate space,
Yep.
right? We can learn how other people found their way into success.
Yeah,
Um,
I love it.
so take me on a little journey. Give me some milestones, some pivotal moments in your life that brought you here. Maybe what you learned from it, or what we can learn from those pivotal
Yeah,
moments.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love the idea. I love the journey because as you said, it's not a mistake that we end up where we are, but it's
yeah,
learning from our mistakes along the way that get us to where we are. So I think that's probably one of the first little things I would say is don't be afraid of making mistakes. And that definitely has been part of my journey, as I know has been part of your journey as well. But for me, before I got into the mortgage industry some 20 years ago, I was a corporate trainer at Dale Carnegie Training. So training
Oh,
has been my lifeblood for a very long time. And had a friend who worked for a wholesale lender who
hey, can
wanted,
I back you up real quick? Even
yeah.
you're moving right, and I know I said 20 years and 20 minutes, and I meant it. But I mean, how did you even get the gig at Dale Carnegie? I mean, how does that? How do you get a gig at Dale
Yeah,
Carnegie as a? What were you with them? You were
I was a corporate trainer.
a corporate trainer from now Dale Carnegie. If people don't know who Dale Carnegie is, one of the most world renowned coaches, or
The very first,
yeah,
really.
yeah, really the very first. And you wind up being a corporate trainer for Dale Carnegie. Would you come out of high school and become a corporate trainer? How'd you get that gig?
No. No. So I was doing training for actually a telecom industry at the time. And my husband went through the Dale Carnegie Sales Advantage course and had some pretty incremental changes, increases in his sales business. And he would come home each week and he's like, "Gosh, you could do this, Ginger. You could do this. I could see you up there doing this," because I already did training. And so I said, "Well, why not? I'll give it a shot." So I called the office and said, "Hey, my husband just went through the course. He had great results. Love to be able to sit down with you and see if there's an opportunity for me to work there." And so the manager said, "Well, we're not hiring anyone right now." And I said, "Well, that's okay. How about if we just do an informational interview?" And so he agreed. I went in and just started going through asking him questions. I think that's a lot of it is be open and don't be afraid when somebody tells you no, because you can always explore things. And so I started having a conversation, who are your clients, what, industries are you serving, and found out they weren't serving the high tech industry. And I live in Oregon, Intel's in our backyard. And I said, "Well, why aren't you doing anything in high tech?" And he goes, "Well, we don't have anyone to focus on that." I'm like, "Okay, you just told me you're not hiring anyone, but you clearly have a need." And so he says, "Yeah, I guess we could have someone." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." And I went through a strategy with him of how I could help him get into the high tech industry in Oregon, because I worked in telecom and doing training anyway. And so he thought about it and I said, "I'll tell you what, Today's Friday. I'll give you a week. And I'm going to call you back next Friday at 10 o'clock. That'll give you a week to put together a plan to bring me on board. And I said, is that fair? And he said, yeah. So a week went by, 10 o'clock, called him up. I said, hey, Dave, I'm calling to find out when you want me to start. And that's the key too, is you have to be bold. I think that's one of the things for me that it's like, I mean, what's the worst thing they're going to do? Say no?
Yeah.
I mean, no big deal. And so I called him up and I said, hey, calling to find out when you want me to start for a job that didn't exist
a week ago.
And he says, I am so glad you called, Ginger. I've been waiting for your call. That's the other thing. People will do what you tell them to do. You just have to be specific in what you tell them. And so I told him I would call him back on Friday, call him at 10 o'clock, and I'd find out when he wanted me to start. So he said, I'm so glad you called. Been waiting for you to call. I want you to start on Monday. I said, okay, great. Now, mind you, my son was in first grade at the time. And so I had to get, daycare, change things around, schedule. And so I said, great. So took care of that, started on Monday and, put a strategy together of launching them into the high tech arena, which we did. We ended up, and this is another thing he told me, I got in-house classes at Mentor Graphics. We got it onto the curriculum at the Oregon Graduate Institute, the Dale Carnegie course.
Okay.
Because I had the president go through. And so it was great. I loved it. And then had a friend that wanted me to help him in the mortgage industry.
So hold on. So hang on. So how long are we with Dale Carnegie doing?
So I was at Dale Carnegie for probably about 3 years.
So 3 years. So in 3 years, you went from, I'm sorry, we're not hiring, to what? Where did you plateau at Dale Carnegie before you made this next move?
In-house? I did in-house classes. We did in-house classes.
But you accomplished the goal, yeah?
Yeah, we accomplished the goal. Yeah. And Dale Carnegie is fabulous. The book, fabulous. If you haven't, read it, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it is a great book to read, especially now. Yeah. I give it as a graduation gift. I mean, it's just something that's just standard. It's one of the best. But it kind of plateaued there. They didn't do anything other than really the 4, different core classes. So I'm a content developer. I love developing content. And so that's what got me into the mortgage industry and started developing marketing and courses and things like that for a wholesale lender.
Okay, so that's where we're going. So you did Dale Carnegie. You're there for about 3 years. You, just because of your nature, you're a creative soul, right? You wanted to develop content. You wanted to go to another place, obviously on your own. And was it you were looking, or did somebody just come around and say, like, I always tell people, nobody finds the mortgage industry finds you.
And that's what happened. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did it happen?
Yeah. I had a good friend of mine who was an underwriting manager for a wholesale lender and needed help. And we were having lunch and he goes, hey, I don't know if you're interested in leaving, but we really need some help. Are you interested? And at the time it's like, yeah, because I was at that point that I wanted to change. And so that's how I got in the mortgage industry and started creating marketing programs. A wholesale lender.
So who was it? Can you say that? Does it matter?
Well, they're not around anymore. It's Capcom. Remember Capital Commerce Mortgage?
Maybe not. No, I don't.
Yeah, they were based down in California. And big. They on the West
what
Coast.
Year is this? Like, what year is it?
What year was that? That was like 2000.
About 2000. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, before all the mayhem. Okay.
Yeah, before all the mayhem.
Okay, so about 2000, the mortgage industry finds you through a guy.
Yeah.
And says, hey, come do, we need somebody in the marketing side of this wholesale company.
Marketing, training, development. And so I started in there, and this is back in the day when I show up, the account executives were honestly standing in the back at a row of copiers with a flyer and typing in fax numbers one at a time into the fax machine, putting the flyer down, and then that wonderful sound that that used to always hear through the fax machine.
Yeah. Sure. The phone thing.
And
yeah.
I said, okay, we need to change that. And so that's when I started putting together email marketing, campaigns for them. And, if your lock didn't go through. And honestly, I started the DSP for account executives. So,
Really?
yep, Monday you would do this, Tuesday you call your pipeline, Wednesday you'd, call for, referrals
And so
and
before
the
you
whole
got
thing.
there, none of this was going on?
No.
How are they? Okay, I don't want to know how they were doing things. I just want to know how
Well,
you got to where you were going. So
yeah.
let's stay on that path because, like we said, 20 years and 20 minutes. So, but okay, so you wind up there. Let me, and I kind of want to go back to that moment real quick. Like, was that a tough interview process or anything, or was it like, oh, you're Dale Carnegie, corporate trainer? Sure, you're hired, or was it?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was a friend, so there was no question
So
it
there was
wasn't a
no.
college
It was
move,
just
yeah.
like you can help. Great,
Yeah,
thanks.
you
So
create the job, make it what it is, what you want it to be, and that's really what I did. It's just made it what I wanted to be, and during that time when I was there, one of their account executives had some life instances that happened and went through a divorce and somebody passed away, and so she freaked out and said, "I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm moving to Italy." And she was a high producing AE. She was doing about 35 million a month. And so they came to me
dang.
and said, "Hey, can you take over her territory? And we're going to give her a little bit of time off to get her head in." And because she was a good AE, she just had stuff going on.
Hmm.
And so I said, sure. I mean, I had all these proficiencies I'd made and I wanted to try them out. And so I took over her territory, implemented the daily success plan that I had created, and took her territory from 35 million a month to 85 million a month in less than 3 months, all
Stop
through
it.
systems. And so it is. And mortgage marketing animals, you guys do a great job. Your breakfast club every morning. It's like, have a system, follow the system. It works. 35 million to 85 million. And so found out I had a knack for being an account executive, not just doing training. And I incorporated training and things like that in it. And then the company went out of business overnight. So
Was
it
that
was,
in '07 or what? What
yeah,
was
I
it? The
think that
crash?
was
Was it the
before that. It
meltdown or
wasn't the crash. It
no?
was before the crash. So it must have been probably, I don't know, 24, 25. When rates ticked up quite a bit, they had not locked. And so when the rates moved,
Oh, they got imploded.
yeah. So
Ah,
they honestly had a record month in July, went out of business in August.
wow.
So I was left without a position, and found out that I liked being an account executive. And so I had a recruiter who I was working with, and I was researching companies, and I'd found a company that I thought was an up and coming company that I thought would be good, which was Argent at the time.
Hey, before you go on to Argent, let's just take a pause and talk about the first wholesale company trainer to AE. AE. I had no idea you were an AE.
Yeah.
And then wildly successful company blows up. What's the lesson here? And I'm kind of throwing you on a spot. I know you probably don't have something you can whip out like that, but if you think about it for a second, like anything learned through that experience, that could maybe help us.
Yeah. I could have left the industry and just said, I'm going back to training. This is crazy. But here's the thing I've learned, in whether it's a mortgage industry or just in life: shift hard, shift fast. And when you get presented with life's events like this, then you have to shift. And I see so many people, Frank, and I know you do too, that they just keep going and keep going and keep going. And there's certain things that you should keep going in, but when you need to shift, don't be afraid to shift and do it quickly. That's why I always say shift hard, shift fast. I don't have any tattoos, but if I've ever had one, that would probably be it.
I just Yeah, I wrote that down. That's the title of this podcast, by the way. But but I just want to still linger here for just one more second, okay? Because you're in this company, you did some remarkable things, revamped them, got them on systems. You took over for a successful person, over doubling that business using your systems, then literally overnight it's over. It's
Yep.
just done. How did you feel? What were you
Well,
feeling?
I mean, it was hard. But I mean, it was a long time ago. So it's probably one of those things that if I would have put too much thought into it, it probably could have been devastating. I don't believe in putting a lot of thought into situations that happen that you can't control. And so I just went into, okay, what's the next opportunity? What lessons did I learn? How can I apply them? And what am I going to take to the next one? And so that's what I did. It's like, okay, where do I want to go? I learned I'm a good account executive. I'm good at sales. I'm good at implementing this, and they make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just said, what can I do to be able to leverage this? So leverage those lessons and then build off of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't take no for an answer. Because, just like with Dale Carnegie, a job that didn't exist, I had the same thing happen again after Capcom went out of business. And that's when I went after Argent.
So let's go. Take us to Argent.
So Argent was up and coming, and a lot of you listening have been around for a while. You remember the Argent days, Danica Patrick, all that kind of stuff. And so I told my recruiter, I said, hey, this is the company I want to go after. And he says, well, it's not my client, but I'll check with the recruiter that has it. So he calls me back. He goes, yeah, they're not hiring. And I'm like, that is bull.
Been there.
Yeah. Because
hold my beer.
I mean, any good company is always hiring good salespeople. And so I called HR down in Orange County and talked to HR and
I gotta ask you, why were you obsessed with Argent? What's the big deal?
Because I wanted a company that was growing. I also didn't have a long track record of being an account executive, and paper account executives were not often hired without a book of business. And so it was just the nature of the beast. I knew that, but I knew if I went to an up and coming that they would give me a chance. I just knew that. And I had a track record, but it wasn't a long track record.
Right. Yeah.
So I knew that. And so I called HR down in Orange County, said I was in Oregon, and they said, yeah, we're not hiring. And again, you can't take no for an answer. So I tracked down the regional manager and called him, and he told me the same thing. He goes, yeah, he goes, thanks so much. We're not hiring. And so I said, listen, I took a territory from 35 million to 85 million in less than 3 months. I don't know if you'd be interested in those kind of results, but we should at least have lunch to find out. And so he said, okay. So we had lunch.
All right.
So, and I knew
he's in Orange County. You're in Oregon. Did he fly there? You fly down there? Or what?
He happened to be in the area. And so we met for lunch, and we had a lot in common. He was from Denver. I was from Denver. We had those commonalities, but I knew, and I sat in the parking lot before I got in for lunch, and I said, I knew I had to close this deal at the time, because if I didn't close the deal in this meeting, I would go into email.
Yeah, you're gone. Yeah.
And so luckily I had great training at Dale Carnegie, and I knew how to close sales and close deals. And I went through, discovery and asking questions and getting through objections and things like that. And at the end of lunch, I just looked at him and I said, well, Russ, do you have any questions you'd like to ask me that would keep you from hiring me today? So, and that's the thing. If you're talking to a real estate agent, hey, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask that would keep us from working together? It's a phrasing question.
I appreciate that, but
I want
to stick with you here for a minute.
That
alone was good. I want to ask you this though too, before you said what he said. So here we have the Dale Carnegie thing helping you on this now, right? We went through the first wholesaler. Now we're here. Now Dale Carnegie training is helping you out.
Yep. Everything that I learned, everything that I taught, all those things.
So what did he say to your question?
So he said, no. He says, I don't. It's like, so Now, the way I keyed that is like, okay, do you have any questions that would keep you from hiring? No, I don't, which means he's going to hire me, right?
Right. That's what I'm getting.
So I said, okay, great. So I'm assuming the standard protocol is, have to do a background check and some paperwork to fill out. So here's my fax number. This is how long ago it was.
Right.
If you fax the paperwork over to me by 4 o'clock today, I'll get it back to you by 5. And then why don't we put my start date? And I put it like 2 weeks out. Put it, 2 weeks out that I'll get started. Does that work? Yeah, that works. So
Okay.
again, a job that didn't exist. Dale Carnegie, no job. But it's discovering. And what I did with him, so the job honestly didn't exist. He fired someone.
Oh,
So
no kidding.
he had an account executive who was just eking by, but he was being lazy and wasn't getting rid of them. And I presented an opportunity to fill that spot. And so he honestly did fire that person, and I took over that person's spot.
What a trip. How did it go at Argent?
It was great. I mean, Argent was a great run.
How'd you do?
I did great. I
Yeah.
mean, it was one of those fabulous companies, great opportunities. And I dug in and just started, building the territory, and had to build my book of business. So I would be calling on, brokers
Yeah.
and meeting with them. Everything you do, again, it's all about the systems. It's the DSP.
Yeah.
It's the DSP.
Yeah.
And that is it. Now I had to do it with the Thomas Guide.
Right. And for people that don't know what that is, it's a map.
It's a great tool. I just showed it to my son. I pulled one out.
It's the map, right? It's the
book of maps.
Right. So you're in one spot and it tells you now go to map D6 and you got to go find D6.
And I would have the little sticky tabs in there. And Monday I knew my route. You'd make your milk route and all of that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Had a great time at Argent. And then from
How long
there,
were you there?
I think I was there probably about 2.5, 3 years. They made some changes to a comp plan that wasn't favorable. And so ended up going to another company, Wilmington, which wasn't great. And then I got back into being a manager. I was a sales manager and went to Plaza, and I was a sales manager for Plaza Home Mortgage. So I did wholesale for quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then from wholesale, then I started teaching continuing education. So I knew this is before the SAFE Act and the NMLS and all that other stuff passed.
So what do you mean? So hang on. So you're at Plaza. Are you an account rep, or you're a manager now?
I'm a sales manager.
So now you're a sales manager managing account reps, account executives. Really?
Account executives.
Okay, let's stop. How was that?
It was good. Again, it was like the reason I've stayed in this industry so long, Frank, is it's such a great industry. It's always changing. There's always opportunity. There's always opportunity, no matter what. There's always opportunity.
There is a lot of opportunity in this industry.
So many.
Okay, so you're managing account executives at Plaza. Now you're getting into continuing education. What does that mean? Like you're still there, you're at Plaza, but you're
so I used CE to get, and I would write the CE class, get it approved in Oregon, and then I would do a train the trainer with my account executives, and we would go teach CE for brokers. And I mean, it's like you want to get into a broker's office. It's like, oh, hey, Frank, I've got an hour CE credit on FHA. How about if I come in and we do a lunch and learn for your entire office? And so then that's how I started teaching again, was teaching continuing education.
But you're coming up with the curriculum and getting it approved. How do you figure out like what they'll accept?
They have a list of guidelines.
Oh, they do. Okay. Yeah. So you can get a list of guidelines and what they'll accept and what they'll approve. And really?
Yep.
So you just put it together and submit it and they say, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And then from there, I started, there's a whole lot of other things, but started developing software that track continuing education because
Are
each
you a programmer?
Was different. I'm not a programmer.
You don't know how to code?
No, but other people do.
How did you do that then? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Hiring people that you had like an idea and decided,
Well, and what happened with that
Why did you do that?
idea,
Yeah.
yeah, so because I taught so much CE, I would get calls from people saying, "Hey, I have to turn in my records for renewal. Do you have a copy of my certificate for that class?" And I honestly had one day, I probably had like 20 people. It's like, "Hey, can you send me?" It's like, "God, do you guys keep a track of this? I mean, is there something that'll track all this stuff?" And they're like, "No." And it's like, "What do you mean there's nothing that tracks your continuing education?" "No, we just have to keep a copy and send it into the state." It's like, well, I can fix that problem. And so, yeah, I just started developing and we got it approved in Oregon. We were a provider here that tracked continuing
How
education.
long
And
did it take to develop that?
oh, I don't know. That the first rendition of it probably took me a couple months.
That's it?
Our big build, which we started getting traction on it, um, took about 6 months to build, and we actually were penning a contract for the California DRE to track all the continuing education for the California DRE.
No. It didn't come to be.
Well, no.
No.
That was in 2008 when the SAFE Act passed and the
Ah,
NMLS was started and
ah.
everything happened. So
I
we
just got to
did,
ask though. I just hung up on this, and I'm sorry, but I just got it. So like, here you are. You're not a coder. People are saying, "Man, I don't have a record of this." You decide I'm going to build this thing out of nowhere. So you just build this thing. You build a crappy version first. Sorry, just kidding. You
yeah.
build a little version first, and then you build a big version, which takes about 6 months. How much money did you spend on this?
Well, I mean, as far as the build, it was about $100,000 for the
Okay,
build.
so 100 grand thrown into this software, and then it starts getting some traction
Yeah.
in Oregon. So did
Well, in Oregon and then in California, and we had like big companies like Fidelity National Title that were, signing up for it. I mean, it was big. It was one of those things, Frank.
I gotta understand this. I gotta understand. So like that, like, how do you like your Ginger Bell, your Plaza account manager of account executives? You build a piece of software, and Fidelity is buying it.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you? Okay, I know we can't go too much longer. This is, but I gotta know this. Like, how do you get in front of somebody at Fidelity to actually consider even looking at it, let alone saying, "Yeah, let's do this"? I mean, how do you make that? Who'd you called it? How did you do that?
You know what? It's one of, I didn't make a call. I think it was their national sales manager saw me speak at an event.
Mm.
And then he called me and said, "I love what you're doing. I want to get you in front of the president because we need this." And so those were the kind of conversations that I was having because nobody was doing it. We had honestly built to where we were tracking every single state. This is before the NMLS. And then the SAFE Act passed, the NMLS was created. We did bid on that contract. The phone call came from the NMLS, and it was from the president. He says, "Ginger, I have to tell you, your software is the best solution, but we can't go with you because you're a startup and everything is so important and contingent upon this working." They even called me and said, "Can you get a backer? Can you get someone financially to back you?" Now, mind you, everything in the mortgage industry is imploding. There's absolutely no investment going on for anything. I mean, you lived through it. You know what it's like. There's nothing. It's like, yeah, if I could find a backer, I certainly would find a backer. But yeah, so we did not get the NMLS contract, but they did call me and said, "You have the best solution. We just can't go with you."
I'm just flabbergasted. Even to get there, it's like being nominated for the Grammy. You know what I mean? You got the nomination. You're a strong contender. They even wanted to get you, but you just the circumstance. But I do understand their position, really. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
you think about it,
Oh, yeah,
there's
for
a startup.
technology.
There's some
Yeah.
big old, bloated, no good other company that's been around forever that's got
Well, and
some
it went to a
backing.
company out of England. So it wasn't
England.
even, and they ended up dropping them after a couple of years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. So some
This has been
heartbreaks along the way.
this so this has just been awesome. I never knew this about you. So let's keep going. Now, where are we? Bring us home. Bring us home, Ginger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you may have to do a part 2 to this because it's one of those things, when everything exploded and I was having lunch with my friend who got me into the industry back many years ago.
You know what? I'm going to stop you. I like the idea. I want to do a part 2.
Okay.
I want to do a part 2. This is just absolutely terrific. It's way more fun than I even thought it would be. And your journey is absolutely remarkable. I bet you most of the people that know you have no idea about any of this stuff.
Yeah, probably not.
No idea what's beneath the surface,
Yeah.
right, of edu marketing, right, and Ginger Bell. And it's a lot. And it's notable. And it's massive. And it kind of all started, with you telling a guy, I'll call you next week.
Yeah.
Right? I'll call you next week.
Yep.
And that's how this all kind of launched. And I mean, we're going to leave this off, guys. This is part 1. We left it off with the NMLS was stupid and didn't hire Ginger and her team. They went with a company from England that wound up blowing up in a couple of years, and they had to do something else. But absolutely fascinating so far. A lot of lessons learned. Shift Hard and Shift Fast is going to be the title of this podcast. This is part 1 of our very first Journey to Success series that I'll be doing. We're going to come back and do part 2. We'll have to do that early next week if that's okay. I'm going to be in Florida. I'm heading to the boot camp.
Yep.
I know I'm riveted. I'm on pins and needles. I want to see what comes next. And I think everybody else does too. So let's just sign it off here, Ginger. Really great stuff. I really appreciate you doing this just on a whim, by the way. And
which you're so good at. That's what I love about you. It's like, I don't know. What if we try this? I think that's a good idea. Let's do it.
Well, I couldn't get away with that with a lot of people, but I knew I could with you. So that's great. We'll go ahead and sign off, guys, here for now. We're going to come back with part 2 next week. So thanks for joining us here, myself, Frank Garay, and Ginger Bell, here at the Mortgage Loan Officer Podcast, brought to you by the Mortgage Marketing Animals. One little pitch before we go. I would really encourage you guys to come and join me at Loan Officer Breakfast Club every Monday through Thursday, 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern. Absolutely free coaching for mortgage originators of every experience level. We've got people there that have been in the business 40 years and people that are closing their very first loan. Pretty exciting stuff, Ginger. It really is when we get those guys to raise their hand. And it's just an absolute ball. So fantastic. You will absolutely love it if you join us. Just go to loanofficerbreakfastclub.com. That's loanofficerbreakfastclub.com. And next week, join us again here at this podcast, where we'll resume with Ginger Bell on her journey to success for part 2. And we'll close it up. Hopefully, who knows? Maybe we'll go to part 3. Maybe you'll just be season 1, right? We'll have many parts. You'll just be season 1. So with that, we'll get out of here. Ginger, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And we'll see you guys here next week. Adios.